Support for Elwood City Limits is made possible by Facebook,
Facebook.com/Elwood City Limits,
Twitter,
@ECL Podcast,
email,
ElwoodCityLimits@gmail.com,
and by subscribing on iTunes and following us on SoundCloud. Thank you.
and my free time.
Hey you, welcome to the latest episode. Well, unless you're listening in non-chronological order, the latest episode that you're aware of, that you're listening to, Elwood City Limits, the Elwood City Limits podcast. Well, it is the episodic Arthur podcast. My goodness, can you tell that I almost fell asleep half an hour ago? This is Will Young, your host, coming at you. But definitely on the other side of the scale, having just slugged back a coffee, he tells me, is my co-host, Lucas Mancini.
Well, I got big news.
What's that?
We're expecting great content from this episode of Elwood City Limits.
Okay, I didn't know what to expect from that introduction. But you're right. I, taking notes in this episode. Actually, today, so it's rare that I leave note-taking to the day of the episode, but it's good because then it's fresh in my mind. And I gotta say, although, a little bit inside baseball, a little bit inside podcast here, normally I take around maybe 2.5 to 3 pages of written notes, handwritten notes. Today it's only a full 2, but I think that these notes are some of the densest that I've ever taken. There's
Interesting.
There's a lot of information and a lot that can be gained, so I don't want to waste any more time. Let's get into today's episode. If you're watching along with us, I'm happy to say that this episode can be found in full on YouTube. You just have to go digging, and hopefully you can find it well and good. If you haven't purchased, a VHS or DVD copy or seen it on pbskids.org. Today,
Do you know what numbered episode this is? I don't even know how far we are into season 1.
Well, this episode that we're recording right now would be episode 11 of our podcast.
Wow, we already broke episode 10? Shows
Yeah.
how much I've been paying attention.
So depending on how you want to count it, it's either episode 11 of Arthur or episode 21 and 22. Because you would just double 11.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. Take a shot. Lucas didn't know math for a second. All right, so today we are talking about... Well, it's a tale. It's an account of 2 tales. It's Arthur's baby and DW's baby. So it's all about the origin of baby Kate, and it starts at Arthur's baby because it is Kate's first birthday, and she's sitting in her high chair. She's got her party hat on. Everybody's getting ready, and she has a big piece of cake in front of her. And of course, what does she do to start it all off? She just, like a baby, just smothers it into her face to the horror, to the surprise and shock of her family. But I gotta say, what did you realistically expect a baby to do with cake?
The animation on this dripping cake is crazy.
It looks rather liquid. You're right.
I was just gonna say it looks like a liquidy. It looks less like the consistency of cake and more like the consistency of like a really drippy lasagna.
And it's colored red and white, too. It's almost like red velvet or something. That's a good point. I didn't quite get lasagna, but the consistency leaves me feeling suspect. So
Kate hates Mondays.
We get Arthur doing a bit of Ferris Bueller in both of these introductions. The first one is a bit more direct.
He says, babies do some dopey things, but I guess we were all babies once.
Yeah.
Arthur's right.
He's not wrong, although perhaps a little crude in that they do some dopey things. But I guess Arthur not particularly kind to babies in that sense. We'll get back to that. So we go to Arthur highlighting a few dopey baby things, like with Buster, as a baby, was wheeled around in a grocery cart and would eat everything he could get his hands on. Surprisingly, we go to a baby Mr. Ratburn, and we get a confirmed... Well, sort of. We get a confirmed, for now, first name.
Oh, my goodness.
That he is Emil Ratburn.
You have me with intrigue.
Because his mother says, Emil, what are you doing? But I think this is something where this will get a retcon later in the series.
Maybe that's like either a nickname or a middle name.
A second middle name, because we know his full name at some point in the series. I couldn't tell you exactly when, but I know that it will be confirmed sooner rather than later.
And the thing that baby Mr. Ratburn is doing is he's doing math equations, but he's not doing it on a chalkboard. He's doing it on his mom's walls. So I guess
with crayon.
Still technically dopey because it's a nuisance, but a baby doing math equations is crazy impressive, especially for me.
Yeah. And finally, we see baby versions of Arthur's mom and dad. And we get Arthur's mom, which really made me laugh. She just looks at the camera and points angrily. Clean your room. Clearly just his mother's voice actor pitched up. It was really funny. And so Arthur is kind of thinking wistfully back on Kate. He says, I miss when Kate was a little baby. Well, she is. She's just turning 1.
That's true. I guess
she's not. I wouldn't even count that as toddler. She's still a baby.
Yeah, I guess like she's never walking on her hind legs or anything like that.
Not really, like ish here and there, but she's still very much developing. Like when my niece turns 1 next year, she's still gonna be a baby. She'll be a little more upright, but I find like toddler age is to me.
You gotta be like 3, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say like 2 to 3. You have to be able to toddle around.
I've never heard that before.
Well,
I guess that's why they call them toddlers.
Indeed. DW is suspect of Arthur's wistful memories and says that she remembers when Arthur was not so keen on having Kate around, which is kind of the basis of her take on the Kate story. The episode itself, after the cold open, begins with Arthur and DW going ham on some grapes.
Yeah, this is some straight up like Chubby Bunny game. Like they're putting these grapes in their mouths with a ferocity that is a little bit unsettling. Like, this screams choking hazard. And I don't know if I would just thought that because I have babies on the brain with this episode.
Right.
But they are shoveling these grapes into their mouth.
Like two-handed, like literally shoveling.
Fistfuls of grapes. And
because it's not about the sustenance, it's a competition. But what in the world is this Chubby Bunny game? I don't know.
Chubby Bunny is like... you could go down a YouTube rabbit hole if you type this into YouTube. But people, they put marshmallows in their mouth, and it's like, all right, I put one marshmallow in my mouth, and then the next person puts a marshmallow in your mouth until you get to choking hazard territory where people have these mouths full of marshmallows. And you have to say Chubby Bunny every time. Oh. So eventually you're going, Chubby Bunny, because your mouth is stuffed with marshmallows. Don't do this at home, kids. It's actually quite dangerous.
Yeah, that sounds like something.
Whether it be a grape or a marshmallow, that stuff's getting lodged in where it's not supposed to be.
That sounds like something that teenagers of today with YouTube would definitely do. So I'm not at all surprised. So it is indeed a competition. They're struggling for the last grape, and then Arthur, it kind of goes airborne for a little bit, and Arthur is just waiting to receive it, to catch it in his hand, but DW does a sick move and kind of
interception,
slams his hand down and gets it right in her mouth. It's pretty impressive. Mom and Dad have a surprise. Dad says, Arthur, DW, we have a surprise for you. I really wanted to come in and be like, Arthur, DW, we have a surprise for you. What the hell happened to my grapes?
Arthur, DW, we have a surprise. We're getting a divorce now.
Ooh.
Arthur says, you know how the world can be perfect? Remove all little sisters, which is kind of morbid.
That's Arthur's idea of perfect. But, of course, it was said in the heat of passion.
Yeah,
I want to believe that he doesn't 100% mean that. He's just a little salty after losing that grape gambit. Their big announcement, Arthur guesses, what was it? Did he say like a new bike? Something like that. It's like a new bike, and then... DW asks, is Arthur moving out?
Which is a consistent theme with the DW. This is like the third time she's either suggested or asked about Arthur moving out.
And no, finally, their announcement is that they're going to have a baby, to which there's two kind of disparate reactions. DW is geeked about getting a new baby, which I imagine is something that little kids would definitely react to. And then Arthur... pulls this great face at the camera, just a little bit more skeptical, a real Jim from The Office kind of reaction.
Mugging at the camera.
Yeah, really. And so the baby is coming in 6 months. And so Arthur is kind of struggling with that idea because, of course, as the episode goes along, he kind of gets it into his ear that babies aren't all they're cracked up to be. So The first instance of that is that Arthur and Binky are doing amateur wrestling in gym.
This was something that I wrote down too, and I'm a little bit jealous because I think this is more of an America thing than we have here in Canada, like collegiate wrestling, or I guess not even collegiate because it's like elementary school.
Yeah.
But wrestling programs where you put down the mats and you have amateur wrestling at younger ages, that's definitely much more common in the U.S., and I always wished it was more common here because in junior high I did a little bit of it and I absolutely loved it, but there's no organized wrestling in Nova Scotia.
Actually, there is.
Oh, well.
Just not within schools.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, it would have to be extracurricular.
You'd have to join a gym or something.
There's like a league that's in kind of the same municipality that we lived in for a while. But yeah, you would have to get like super serious about it because I tried looking it up once because of course when I was. Well, I'm still into wrestling, but when I was into it in the high school, I was just like, oh, all the best wrestlers started out as amateur wrestlers. So that's why I wanted to learn it. Arthur takes some kind of huge off-screen bump that apparently like sends him flying into the air. Like Binky delivered a vertical suplex of some kind.
Binky gave him the Death Valley driver
or something, and then Binky maybe a choke slam because then Binky goes for the old pin that Kane used to do. Remember the Undertaker would cross the hands over the chest, but Kane would like stick the arms out and then pin them down. In kind of like the inverse of the Undertaker's pin. So I just kind of thought that was funny. A lot of this episode is kind of based around a child's understanding of what babies are. So Binky's first way of taunting Arthur is that better get some good earplugs because babies never stop crying, which leads to one of many kind of dream sequences where the prospective baby of the house is crying so hard that Arthur and his family can't hear each other at the dinner table, and even the firemen in the wailing fire truck outside have to cover their ears.
I thought this was hilarious because I live right next to a fire department.
Oh, yeah.
So I have fire trucks going on all the time, and it was so funny. This fire truck's driving by, and this hypothetical baby Kate is wailing, and the firefighters, they just stick their fingers in their ears.
And I think that's really kind of a basic thing, because I definitely would have thought that as a kid of just like, oh, babies cry all the time, and to be fair, they do, but it's
I was
it's,
gonna say,
it's definitely not like random.
Of all the things that kind of get Arthur spooked about babies from his peers in this episode, I would say this one's the most accurate. I think it depends on the baby, but babies really do kind of cry all the time.
It's true, but like it also, I don't think it would be a situation where they would just leave the crying baby as they are having dinner. It's just like, okay, the baby needs something, so you need to kind of attend to it, sort of thing. Like they don't just do it for no reason, which I feel like is what we kind of got there. And then he gets taunted about how Arthur's going to have to change all those stinky diapers. And so the diapers smell is another big one, which I can totally understand. As a kid, you're like attracted and repelled to gross things. So just this idea of a thermonuclear diaper smell permeating his house. And of course, Buster offers to help with a terrific image. These episodes, terrific reactions and images all the way through, and I'll mention it now. The animation in both of these episodes is really, really good, and leads to some great like I took several screen caps.
Well, it's so interesting that you say that, especially at this moment, because it was at this very moment I came up with my own Arthur meme.
Oh, so for the boot in the face?
The boot in the face.
Okay.
I came up with an idea for an OG meme. It's not that funny.
Okay,
but
so did I. Like, so we're gonna have to. All right, Arthur meme alert. This one. Okay, what was yours? What did you think?
So there's a meme going on these days. It's kind of fading out now, but there was a meme up for a while where it was New Yorkers be like, and people would edit Timberlands on stuff. They would edit a fitted Nike cap and Timberlands on things, and they would put a little speech bubble saying "Yo, dead ass," because it was just apparently if you live in New York, a lot of New Yorkers wear Timberlands at all times. It's like a big thing there, right? Stand outside the Foot Locker, wait for new Timberlands to come out. So since he's got this big hiking boot strapped to his face, just little New Yorkers be like at the bottom of the screen. Trust me, Will, it's kind of funny. It's almost funny.
Okay, well, my idea was, of course, I got the screen cap with Arthur having a boot taped over his face, and all I would do is put in the text, "It's time to stop posting."
There you go. That's a good one too. I like that. A little bit more cerebral.
I guess. So if we can, like, again, this is I'm going to have to open Photoshop at some point and try to fumble my way around. And I mean, I don't know if I can do that New York one, but of course, if you'd like to make these Photoshops.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you're listening to this right now and you're like, ooh, I have an idea, especially make a game out of it. This specific picture, Arthur with the boot strapped to his face, I want to see those memes.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can post them on our Facebook page. We'd love to see them. But I will try. Like, I'll keep that aside and see if I can. I mean, because mine just involves text. Yours is a little bit more involved and kind of.
Oh, you can just have the text at the bottom.
Kind of. Okay.
Yeah.
And kind of. I was gonna say, kind of has your own vision. If we want to replace the boot with a Timbaland or something.
I think that boot looks enough like a Timbaland.
Okay, fair
that
enough.
It's all good.
So you just need Yo Deadass.
Just New Yorkers be like, or you could put Yo Deadass.
Okay, I'll have to look this up later. So, of course, the boot is just a funny side gag. The next thing that Buster suggests is that maybe you can use the baby for your own, like, to make you money. And to which Arthur does seriously consider for a point as they're kind of riding on their bikes, which leads to him using this prospective baby as labor in terms of, like, putting on a carny sideshow where the baby is juggling and drinking its bottle at the same time, and Arthur is reaping the monetary benefits.
It's very like, hello, my baby, hello, my darling.
Yeah, that's sort of
my ragtime
very
gal.
very vaudeville. And the other one is Arthur reading a book and eating an apple at night while his baby is doing his report on Magellan, like stacks of homework from Ratburn himself. So, that kind of stuff. There's another one where they're in the treehouse, and Arthur kind of says, it's like, if only life were like that he could get a baby to do his work for him. Then Francine kind of idly says, you're going to be around that baby so much, you're going to start talking like a baby.
And this might be the most ridiculous suggestion of all of them. We started with a somewhat logical assumption that the baby's going to cry a lot, and now we're just at, this is crazy town.
But don't forget, this is tapping into a very real fear of Arthur's.
Oh, I know.
So the imagined situation is Arthur playing like full tackle football in gym with Mr. Marco as the gym teacher.
Yeah, CTE wasn't exactly a big issue back in the mid-90s.
Binky tackles him. Mr. Marco's like, you okay, Reed? And Arthur says,
Got an ouchie boo-boo.
Got an ouchie boo-boo.
yeah, it's really a lot like that. It's very whiny.
Which I think, it wasn't because Arthur was around a baby. It was because he's got first onset CTE.
Oh my gosh.
His brain's been turned to mush by repeated tackling and concussions. And so that's all Arthur could say.
Ooh.
They were focusing on the wrong issue here.
Oh, man.
Arthur, again, has predicted our future.
Oh man, that is dark. Francine in the dream says Arthur talks like a baby, and to add insult to injury, Binky, as Arthur gets up, says, and he smells like diapers too. gets a real like little boy pop out of it, like a real like hearty laugh from the boys on that one. So just like, man. Arthur's getting ribbed hardcore.
Yet another Arthur fantasy about being humiliated because he's perceived as a baby.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it makes thematic sense. It's very consistent in this show. I never realized that as a kid. As a kid, I always thought like Arthur pretty much had a different problem every episode. But I would say it's the majority of Arthur-focused episodes so far have been him being anxious about being perceived as immature or a baby.
It's really it's his Marty McFly being called a chicken.
Yeah, totally.
It's the absolute like button you press to kind of get Arthur going. And then one more cutaway because they kind of see a stroller of like triplets going past, and Buster says, "What if your mom has more than one?" And I realized I forgot to actually count because in the
I did.
Oh, good. Because in the cutaway, Arthur is slowly being surrounded by more and more babies around the family couch, and then they all start crying, and then Arthur starts screaming in terror.
Yeah, another example of Arthur predicting the future. The Octomom, except it's more than 8 babies. It's 10 babies.
So it's more of a decamom.
Yeah, decamom.
All right, so 10 babies, yeah. I also want to give props. I mean, I already said about the animation. I think it's really great in both these episodes. Very fluid, very expressive. A lot of different baby designs for the, like, different babies. It's not just like like I remember in the first kind of fantasy, it kind of looks like Kate is a baby, but then they move on and there are different looks for babies. Like the one that's doing Arthur's homework kind of looks like a smaller version of Arthur because it has glasses. The 10 babies there, they all look different. And I mean, they're all the same animal. They're all aardvarks, but they managed to all kind of be distinct. And I imagine that like they could have easily just made them all look the same, but I appreciated the commitment to detail in that regard.
There's also, it's just some great visual gags, right? It's one thing to write something funny, and it's an entirely another thing to draw something funny. So we talked about this earlier with the boot on the face. That's just inherently funny out of context.
Sure, absolutely.
But there's also a really great moment of pacing here where when the babies are showing up, they could have just drew 10 babies, but they sort of pop in one after another, and it makes this great noise where it's like...
Yeah, like popcorn.
And it's just a funny visual gag.
We kind of get a long jag of a lot of different fantasies, and so we kind of end those off for now. So Arthur comes home immediately, like takes off his jacket, drops it on the ground.
So did you notice this, though? So this is something that I really appreciated from this episode, this attention to detail. When Arthur comes home, you see that time has passed, because earlier in the episode, when they're kind of discussing the things that are going to happen to Arthur because of this baby, they're swimming, they're doing stuff that I would usually associate with warmer months. But when Arthur comes home, you could see the fall leaves in the background. He's wearing his fall jacket. We could see that this is many months later. They show the passage of time with the background settings, and it's a really small detail, but totally something you would notice if you're like what you or I were paying very close attention to these Arthur episodes.
Well, so small that I didn't even notice it, but that totally makes sense. That's at some point I was going to mention the fact that kind of Kate's birth announcement is mid-year when we're in the summer months. So Kate is presumably a November, December, maybe even late fall, winter baby.
And so that makes sense with this, because when Arthur puts his jacket on the ground, his mom is very noticeably pregnant.
Yeah.
As opposed to when they first announced it, she said she was about like 3 weeks pregnant or something. So
well, she said when they told Arthur and DW, they said that they were going to have a baby in 6 months. So
so 3 months.
So she was past the first trimester at this point, and weirdly not showing, but whatever. But yeah, no, that's a great observation. I couldn't stop observing the fact that Arthur left his friggin' coat in the middle of the hallway, and that would have gotten me a talking to from my parents. Don't just leave your junk on the floor. So at this point, Arthur is very nervous about the prospect of a baby. DW is dressed up in doctor outfit, which kind of comes into play more in her episode. But at this point, she is kind of she's amped up for the baby and is ready to like care for it in whatever way possible, putting diapers and everything, including Arthur's Bionic Bunny action figure. And so Arthur's mom calls them over to show them what they were like when they were a baby, because of course that's where we all kind of come from.
Yeah, Arthur's not happy about the diaper on his action figure either. He actually throws a tiny little tantrum, he's like, get that diaper off.
He doesn't want any kind of association with being a baby, especially with the things he loves. Bionic Bunny's not a baby, he's a man. Or a bunny.
The more we watch this, Arthur's going to need some therapy later in life, I think.
It's going to be a real
baby thing's unhealthy.
It's going to be a real problem. I mean, it kind of already is. So there's, some home videos of Arthur when he was little, taking his first steps. And then we go to DW. Funny enough, DW, who is this intelligent, well-spoken 4-year-old, was a nightmare baby and was just completely, screaming all the time, that kind of kid. Nothing could calm her down. There's one that they cut to where her bowl of baby food is on her head and she's just screaming and pounding her high chair. And yet DW, kind of in love with herself, says, "Don't I look adorable?"
Yeah, there's kind of a beat there because you're wondering if DW is going to be disappointed at this footage. And she goes, "Don't I look adorable?" This was great because it reminded me of when I looked at our old baby footage or tales from my parents of when me and my sister were babies. And my sister was very similar to Arthur, where she was very calm, cool, and collected, a very quiet, well-behaved baby. And I was more like DW, where I was colicky and I would scream and be a nightmare all night long.
I think I was the opposite. I think my older sister was a bit more cranky, and I was the calm baby. So I don't know what that's like. The next thing is that Arthur's mom is preparing her suitcase because, of course, she's going to blow at any second, and she's got to be ready to go. And so DW gives her something to take along with her, and it's a it's a framed glamour shot of DW, like either a Jostens or Walmart picture, of just gives it to her mother and says, to help you make another perfect kid.
Yeah, DW channeling her inner Johnny Cage. Giving,
to my number one fan.
Yeah, here's an 8x10.
I just love that she had that on standby because of course they would have taken those. So they cut to an A morning at some point, like not the next morning, obviously, but some other morning where DW and Arthur are butt racing down the stairs.
Yeah, stair race. Do you remember stair racing?
You know what? I actually do now that you mention it. I remember. I think I actually saw it here, and then I was like, I want to try that. And of course, my stairs had carpet on them, so they were kind of easy to butt bounce down.
I always thought this was like, I always thought stair racing to me was something that I had come up with, or like my circle of friends had come up with. So it's so strange to look back and see, no, this was like a thing in popular culture. Kids just butt bounce down the stairs, which is actually pretty dangerous. You could get carpet burn,
mess up your spine.
Yeah, your tailbone.
Sure, but hey, it's not bothering them too much. So they get into the kitchen, and Grandma Thora is there. They're surprised. They say, Grandma Thora, you're in the wrong house.
Yeah, that's DW's line. She's making blueberry pancakes, though. So.
It's true. So apparently, sometime in the night, like when DW and Arthur were asleep, because they are none the wiser. They don't know anything about this. So, Arthur's mom and dad made the cleanest getaway possible to the hospital and then went into this lightning quick labor because as soon as Arthur and DW are dressed and ready to go, Grandma Thora tells them that they have a new baby sister.
I mean, how old? Arthur's 8, right?
Yeah.
And DW is 4? I could see them being in bed by 8 o'clock. Let's say they have to go to the hospital around 10 or 10:30. You can have an all-night labor and the baby be ready by the next morning.
I mean, I'm sure it's not outside of the realm of possibility. It's just all of the birth stories that I've been privy to. It's just not that quick. And it's not even that it's weird that they didn't tell them. It's weird because, you would think what if they wake up in the middle of the night and then their parents aren't there?
Well, I would think that Grandma Thora stayed the night, after they were asleep.
But they would still be like, where's Mom and Dad? Why is Grandma Thora here?
Which they actually are in this
episode.
No,
but during the night, if that had happened, you gotta kind of prepare for that. And of course, if they found out, if it's Grandma Thora's here, which means Mom and Dad went to the hospital, and so then they would be super excited about the baby. You wouldn't be able to get them back to sleep.
I know. I think back to when my little sister was born. Now, keep in mind, I was 6 years old, so my memory is not the clearest. But I think I kind of felt like I had not a great grasp of what was going on. I was kind of following people places, and I spent the majority of the time with my grandma and hung out across the street from the hospital or whatever. But I was kind of just going with the flow. And I was a little bit younger than Arthur was back then, but I guess I didn't put that much thought into the whole process.
Well, and see, the way that my sister is told, kind of I've had the story of my birth kind of told to me a few times, and the way my sister was is that, she was staying over, well, first of all, my mother took her to a friend's house so that my mom's friend could watch her while they went to the hospital, and so she knew it's oh, baby's coming. And so, of course, she was too jazzed to, sleep, and they kept getting updates by phone. And, I don't believe my sister got a whole lot of sleep. So, it's a cartoon. So, of course, they can do whatever they want. It's just, I just wanted to note that, my God, lightning fast labor going on here. So, whether or not that's possible, whatever.
Hey, maybe she had a cesarean section. Who knows?
Well, then I feel like that would take even longer. Again, not a baby expert. I guess
me and you aren't really well equipped on birthing theory.
But C-section I don't think is something that makes it quicker necessarily. And of course, we have no idea how long she spends in the hospital. So of course, DW is amped to the extreme that they have a new baby sister. Arthur with another great look at the camera as he says, "Oh, brother." DW corrects him, says, "Oh, sister." And Arthur has a real great deflated Yahoo. So of course we get a shot of Kate in the kind of the newborn unit, and She's just adorable.
I couldn't quite tell if they had marked her foot. Come on, Reed family. You got to make sure that baby doesn't get stole. That's baby birth 101. You bring a Sharpie with you. The second you pop that sucker out, mark its foot.
I've never heard of this practice before.
Oh yeah, babies.
I know that babies get stolen, but
all the time, Will. All the time, babies are getting stolen non-stop. You got to protect your baby.
Whatever you say, man. I was not aware that was a precaution we took. Anyway, kind of the same as Pal. I just think that Kate is the cutest, and like every time she's on screen, I'm just like, oh, jeez. Like I made that noise a bunch of times, and just kind of getting a cuteness overload. So eventually they take her home and kind of get used to having her around the house. And there's a scene where Mom's on the couch with Kate and DW and Arthur right beside her, and their dad's kind of taken a video of them, obviously baby footage. I must say that even though like Arthur is a bit more nervous about holding Kate, he and DW both do a great job of holding her for the first time, because I kind of had to be taught by my sister to hold my niece the correct way, which is, you support the baby's head, and then they're really small, so they can basically fit in the crook of your arm. So you support their body with your arm and the head with one hand. And they do that immediately without even being prompted. So, like, props on good baby holding.
And though I may understand the technique, I'm a naturally clumsy person, so I'm still not mentally comfortable with holding a baby.
Well, that's the other thing is that Arthur holds the baby, and then it becomes a running theme is that Kate immediately starts crying, and Arthur just goes, "Mom, Mom," and then like screams to have it taken away from him, because I think that it's. I don't think this is necessarily Arthur's representative of this, but it's definitely evocative of what I think is maybe stereotypically the male unease around babies. Of course, this is not a hard and fast rule, but a lot of guys that I know are very uneasy around the prospect of holding babies or being around babies. Like, they're not comfortable with them. And like I was too, until I got the chance to kind of be around my niece a lot more. And like anything, you kind of get the comfort level as you go along, but it is very nerve-wracking, because like you, I was like, oh, I don't want to like drop her. I don't want to hold her wrong. I don't want to, what if she cries while I hold her? What if she poops? All this kind of stuff.
What if she poops?
Well, it's not a what if scenario. It's going to happen.
Listen, if I'm holding the baby, poop on me is the least of my worries. As long as the baby makes it out scot-free, I'll take all the poop.
Well, the poop doesn't normally get on you, thankfully, as long as the diaper's done up right. You just kind of hear it and then you smell it.
You weren't exaggerating when you say Arthur screams. Like,
yeah.
This is it's more than a yell. Like, Arthur is terrified that he's holding this crying baby. Like, the delivery from his voice actor is great. He's really freaking out.
He panics. He really panics. And I don't blame him. Like, I would certainly have felt like that at some point. And then DW holds her immediately, and she calms down, and she says she doesn't cry when I hold her. And then another great, just Arthur just completely gassed, looking at the camera, just like what's the matter with me?
Yeah, we get a lot of Jim faces from Arthur in this episode.
Arthur emulating another fourth wall breaking character, from Ferris Bueller to Jim Halpert. Arthur, one of the many great fourth wall breaking characters in fiction. Poor Arthur. The theme for the rest of this episode is that every time he gets even close to Kate, even when he kind of looks her the wrong way, like, she just immediately starts crying, and he just immediately chalks up to the fact that the baby hates him, which he says as much to his friends, because she doesn't cry when anybody else holds her, just him. So I imagine that's kind of I almost have my own weird hang up about it, because like, whenever there's a baby or a kid around, you always go like, put on a nice smile and you say hello. And every time I do that or like try and make faces at a baby, they always give me like they just like stare at me and are just like, "What are you doing? Are you?"
I was just gonna say,
are you trying to be funny right now?
Will just gave me his neutral face, as if he was create a character in a video game, and they wanted to show what his face looked like with no expression, and then he sort of bulged his eyes out at me.
They just regard me with complete apathy, and it just makes me feel like a loser, because it's like. It's like I'm just trying to make you happy, baby.
A loser, huh?
Yeah, really. I mean, it's like it makes me feel unfunny because it's like, man, if I can't make a baby laugh with my dumb, huge face, then like, what hope do I have to make anybody laugh?
This is really interesting because I think this whole thing is going to boil down with how we both react to this episode. Because at this point is where I'm sort of losing my empathy for Arthur and his reaction to the situation. And I think this might be because I'm having a difficulty putting myself in Arthur's situation because I don't think I have the same anxieties when it comes to babies. And it actually gets into what we said earlier about babies crying. And so Arthur thinks that the baby cries all the time when he acknowledges it because the baby hates him or his face or whatever. And agree with Francine, which she says later. She says, Arthur, she's a baby. Babies cry. And I think I just assume personally that babies are crying. If I was to hold a baby and it immediately starts crying, it's no sweat off my back. Oh, the baby's freaking out. Whatever. Pass the baby back. It's all said and done. But Arthur sort of has a ton of anxiety about this whole thing.
Well, and
I kind of get it. I can kind of see why he reacts in this way. But I also think this is one of the reasons why I sort of understand DW's perspective in the next episode more than I do Arthur's.
Well, I definitely understand Arthur's because, I mean, first off, he is a very anxious character. He's a lot of anxieties and hang-ups about stuff. And especially when you're a kid, it's kind of hard to understand that even though babies are, like, literally don't know anything, their brains are completely new, like, it's hard to not take something like that personally. And, of course, it is, a lot of it is just kind of like bad luck, is that the baby just happens to be in a bad mood or just not used to Arthur at this point.
I mean, he does have glasses, too. Babies freak out when you got glasses.
Sure. And so I completely understand him taking it personally, because if I was his age and that was happening to me, I would be like, oh, the baby doesn't like me. And so I understand where he's coming from. But I can appreciate that, of course, you know, us being a lot older, we don't take it personally anymore. Mm-hmm. But I do kind of feel bad for him. Of course, he's just trying to get close to Kate, but nothing's really working. His mind is kind of working against him. So, but eventually, his mother asks him to look after her while she kind of goes and does something in another room. Arthur goes to kind of give her a real kind gesture, and it looks like it might be working. To kind of, she drops her pacifier, and he goes to give it back to her. Then DW storms into the room again in her doctor outfit. C. Wright for DW's Doctor Alt outfit says, "Is that on the floor? It has to be sterilized."
And then she takes a handkerchief. So she opens up her doctor's bag with all her baby tools or whatever. Her baby, all this stuff.
Yes.
And she takes this, like, it's like a handkerchief or a cloth or something like that was also on the ground and sterilizes the soother that was on the ground with something else on the ground.
She just kind of breathes on it and then kind of like wipes it down, and then it's fine.
If anything,
it's to her liking.
If anything, DW doubled the germs.
Yeah, really. Well, it's that, and especially we get into this in the second part of the episode, is that DW is very protective of what she considers to be her baby, because a big line that she keeps using is, "Everyone stand back," or "I know exactly what to do," and she kind of takes charge of the whole thing. Buster and Francine come over to invite Arthur to play, but of course they come to see Kate as well after DW invites them in, and so Kate just can't get comfortable. Like she's crying, she loses her pacifier.
Well, she spits out the pacifier, probably because it was covered with dirt from the floor,
or something, or she's just inconsolable at this point. DW asks Arthur to hold her while she gets a clean diaper, and so I mean, props to DW going in there to change a diaper. Like no, I haven't changed a diaper yet, but that's going to change soon, I'm sure. I know how it's done, but not exactly something to look forward to. So DW very gung-ho. So Arthur kind of takes Kate, and in a very mature moment, I thought he's like, I wonder what she's trying to tell us. He kind of stops taking it personally and realizes that something is wrong, I guess, with Kate. And he kind of pats her back some, and eventually stumbles into the answer. She just needed to be burped. And then Kate gives a little sigh, and then she just buries her head into his shoulder, and my heart melts. So cute. And then she comes back, and then or Arthur's mom comes back, and is everything okay? It is now. And then Buster goes, gross. She's spitting on him, but of course she's kissing him, and then the episode ends on a very cute note. And it made me miss my niece and all that sort of stuff.
Aww.
I'm a big old softy. I'm a friggin' idiot. Now, a quick note on and now a word from us kids. Not a whole lot to note with this one, just that the kids in the school they were talking to were just talking about their baby siblings and just, had some pictures of them, how to take care of them. Sometimes they change their diapers and, that kind of stuff. There really wasn't much to say, but, it was fine.
Yeah. I will say, because I missed out last A Word From Us Kids, I got a little snapshot of the crazy synth that was being used in the background of this episode.
Yeah.
Sort of it almost, this is kind of a stretch, but it almost sounded like a John Carpenter MIDI if you were trying to make a lullaby with like John Carpenter noises.
I'll have to go back and listen to it because I don't remember the tune off the top of my head.
Baby's First Escape from New York.
Right.
a little bit, not too close,
yeah, okay.
but it was a little strange.
I could think of it that way. Also, of course, there was an ad in the middle of this Arthur YouTube video, and wouldn't you know?
I didn't see this ad.
The chances are it would have been completely different, and it was for another children's television show, the Teletubbies, which were somewhat contemporaries of Arthur on PBS. They have new talking Teletubbies toys, which did you watch those when you were little?
Oh yeah, big Teletubbies fan over here. Let me tell you, we could have a whole separate podcast. I got a lot to say about the Teletubbies and their whole ecosystem and culture. Will, if you ever do a deep dive on the lore of Teletubbies, it's insane. It's crazy.
Well, there you go. Another reason for us to get Patreon bonus episode, the Teletubbies. But because I was a huge Teletubby fan too, and it was not cool for me to be a Teletubby fan. Oh,
you were a little old for the Teletubbies?
Oh, yeah, I was big time. It was, well, not to dive into a later Arthur episode, but it was exactly the situation of Arthur and the Love Ducks. The show that he is clearly too old to watch, but likes it anyway. And I really think that particular episode, because just to give you an idea of what that episode was about really quick, it was that Arthur stumbles upon this show called The Love Ducks, which is for little kids, and all it is these multicolored ducks that will like quack classical music, and it ends up being entrancing to him. And it's so weird that he likes it, but then of course he becomes a pariah because everybody thinks that show is for babies.
Another example of Arthur predicting the future. They came up with bronies.
I don't think. Well, save it for the episode. We'll save it for the episode. Yeah, but that was exactly the situation I was in because I had Teletubby videotapes. I had every single talking Teletubbies doll. And my mother actually dug them up last year, and like I came to stay at my childhood house, and she just left them on the pillow and was just like, "Remember these?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And I'm not like embarrassed about it or anything. I just really I have a soft spot in my heart, as you heard talking in the last episode. I'm a big old softy, so these kind of stuffed animal-looking things, and they had these cute voices, and they kind of acted babyish. Like that was around the time like I grew up when people, when kids would be like, make those drawings of them like murdering Barney and Teletubbies and then like that sort of stuff. But I was like, I really took the more innocent route, and I just really liked them because they were cute and cuddly.
Lots of pictures of tech deck dudes like slicing up Tinky Winky.
Yeah.
Which one was your favorite, by the way? Well, we have to move on from this. We could talk about Teletubbies all night, but are you a Poe man? Yeah, I was going to guess.
Why? What tipped you off?
People really like Poe. I remember, like, as a kid, that was the most popular one. As I got older, what's the green one's name?
Dipsy.
Oh, Dipsy's totes the best one, though.
Dipsy is hilarious.
Dude, like, hindsight's 2020. We were sleeping on Dipsy back in the day. Dipsy's like, he's got that sick hat. I love Dipsy. Dipsy's a pimp. I'll tell you what, though. One last thing about the Teletubbies. We got to move on.
Yeah, sure.
I think it's messed up that they make all that mess, and then, like, Nunu's the only one who cleans it up. Like, Nunu's the real MVP of the Teletubbies. They do nothing. All they do is mess up their house and dance around and poor Nunu is the one that keeps that whole compound afloat. So, shouts out to Nunu.
Well, someday I hope that we get enough support that we can launch a Patreon, because we would absolutely have maybe a couple of episodes worth of Teletubby fodder. So I'm glad that I found a kindred spirit in you. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, man, that had Dipsy killing the game. Dipsy killing the game.
And Poe's Scooter and her little Chinese sayings. It was so cute. And speaking of cute, we get to the second part of the episode. It is DW's baby. Now, this starts off again with Arthur kind of Ferris Buellering, but I have to give the man respect. He's watching his first birthday, like we started in the first half with Kate's first birthday. So then Arthur is watching his first birthday, and Arthur is MST3K'ing his own birthday because they're trying to teach him how to blow out the candle, and baby Arthur is not getting it. And Arthur's kind of laughing at himself and razzing himself to be like, come on, Arthur. Like, just really cheering himself on. And I appreciate that he was able to kind of laugh at himself.
Mitch.
Rousdower.
This is when we start to figure out that this episode very much literally is DW's perspective on the whole baby thing.
In kind of a Rashomon take on the same story.
Yeah, it's interesting that, and I think this series plays with this kind of concept later on again, but it's really interesting the way that they decide to tell this story from these two different perspectives. Like you said, it's very Rashomon. It's almost Pulp Fiction-esque. The PS1 game, Incredible Crisis. They all have this kind of storytelling technique in common. Interesting that a children's show decided to use this storytelling technique.
Sure.
And it's also very useful because we get to see how not only people of different genders and ages perceive this very, like, everybody basically is going to experience this in their life, whether it's a relative or actually their sister or brother. A new baby is something that a lot of kids have to deal with. So I thought it was smart for the writers to show all perspectives of how this could impact someone.
Yeah, and with kind of different, very nuanced take, because you wouldn't think that, a 4-year-old would see it different from an 8-year-old, but it's true. Like, they absolutely see it different ways, as we'll get into. Arthur also looking at DW's first birthday, when she is also not only a very prone to crying, but also just very talkative. I laughed because DW, kind of the first thing that you can tell that she says is that Arthur's trying to teach her how to blow up the candle, and all she says is, "Give me lovey presents." So I thought that was really cute.
DW, very after my own heart.
And we start we don't need the backstory. We got all that in Arthur's, so we really start with Mom and Dad coming home with Kate.
Before that, I'll just say this real quick.
Yeah.
DW is filming Arthur.
Yes.
Well, Arthur's looking at all this, and she's filming him upside down. She says, she's using a Dutch angle, essentially.
Yeah.
And she goes, I'm just trying to make Arthur look more interesting, but it's hopeless.
Yeah. And of course, they are videotaping Kate's first birthday, or DW is the camera person for that one. It's the same, and you kind of mentioned it's two ways of telling the same story, and I like that. So in the last episode, we talked about how there was a weird inconsistency, if you remember, from Arthur's birthday, where it's like, we see the beginning of the episode, and then we see that beginning again, but it has these weird changes in it that are kind of unaccounted for. This one has a built-in excuse because it's a different character's memory of that time. So it's going to be different. It's going to be focusing on different things. Things are going to look a little different. Things are going to sound a little different. And like, you already have the built-in excuse of, well, that's how DW saw it. So there's a bit of different animation when they arrive at the house. There's different lines, kind of, or additional lines, because DW is kind of really, really wants to hold Kate, and so they both kind of see it differently, but there's definitely an explanation for why it is different, and I appreciate that. The first thing they do is they put Kate down for a nap because she's sleeping. DW is kind of confused because she was waiting for the baby to kind of come in so she could hold it and play with it, but of course Kate's probably really tuckered out. And so she kind of looks at Kate for a little bit and then is carried away by her dad. And then she says, "Is that it?" And so that's kind of the theme, a bit of the theme of DW's interpretation of Kate, is that she's not afraid of her and she's not nervous about her, but she's kind of wondering what the big deal is, which for a younger kid, is absolutely plausible.
Yeah, whereas Arthur was wrestling with anxiety, DW is sort of coming to terms with disappointment and Kate not meeting her expectations.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very much a Disney's Animal Kingdom syndrome. The animals are all asleep.
And yeah, exactly. And really trying to find her own role as because now she's not the youngest in the family, she's the middle child and now has to figure out where she fits with Kate. At some point, they're watching a show on TV and I'm so curious because it's Arthur's dad, Arthur, and DW, and DW has the baby monitor, and she is just noting when Kate is inhaling and exhaling, waiting for something to happen. And they're watching some kind of, there's circus music coming out of the TV, and there's bouncing sound effects, and Arthur's dad is loving it.
That's true. He's the only one who's really engaged with the TV show.
And because Arthur's annoyed because DW keeps saying inhale, exhale, basically.
You do hear words, do you? If you listen really carefully.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
It was just kind of music and sound effects, and I was it sounds like they're watching a kids show or something. But Arthur's dad loving what he's seeing. Might as well be watching Eddie Murphy's Raw.
That's true. He is really yucking it up.
Yeah. Arthur's mom and dad, for being fresh from the hospital and having a new baby in the household, they are remarkably calm and well rested. There's not a sign of wear and tear on them. They are just two rocks in a storm, these two.
Arthur and DW, they have a very, very good household. You could tell that Arthur's mom and dad are sort of written as the prototypical mom and dad, the measuring stick that all other parents should be measured against.
And I think that's definitely in the early episodes, too. There's not a lot of admittance to any kind of shortcomings with them. They are very much, because the show is about the kids, and the parents have a role. And the role is to kind of be invisible most of the time, to kind of give way to the kids' storylines. But it kind of comes across as man, these two are just perfect. Arthur's dad is giving Kate a bath in the sink, and DW is kind of watching and wants to give her a bath, but will have to wait until she's a bit older to do that. We get the return of Nadine, and DW is putting herself in the role of baby expert. So she has the doctor's outfit, she has the scrubs, she has her doctor bag, and is ready to take on that role of baby expert, which I don't know who accredited her. But she says that when Arthur's mom asks her to take care of DW, she says, why did she ask him? Arthur doesn't know beans about babies.
The way she talks about all this, it's like she's channeling Vince Vaughn from Swingers, calling I'm an expert, baby, you're so money.
This is the baby behind the baby, behind the baby.
This right here, this scene is an argument for Nadine not being real, because Arthur looks directly at her at some point.
Yes, and it's just, apparently he's just looking at DW as they both go, they have this little line that they have, it's adults, just give them time. They're slow learners.
Which is a great line.
And apparently it's just DW saying this and hearing the response back in her own head. And Arthur's just looking over just what in the...
Another Jim face.
You gotta be kidding me. So then we get into this scene that was the end of Arthur's episode, but is the middle of DW's, where Arthur is trying to give her back the pacifier, and DW kind of storms in, and there's a bit of additional DW dialogue, which basically amounts to her saying, everyone stand back, I know what she wants. And I gotta say, there is a fantastic screen cap where DW kind of picks Kate up, which she did in the previous episode, but in this one, we get to see a little bit of her reaction, not from Arthur's eyes, where she kind of picks her up and then just goes into the camera, her eyes go wide and her mouth drops open. She is terrified.
It's very Scream face, the Van Gogh.
Yes, very much so. Kind of the same animation as the first part of the episode, where it's Arthur burps Kate and DW's out of the room.
Though this time she doesn't try and clean this pacifier with the handkerchief. She cleans it with Arthur's shirt, which I will say again, not any more sanitary.
No.
I digress.
The end of Arthur's baby was kind of sentimental and very sweet. This one, it's not the end of the episode, and DW is angry that Arthur was the one to comfort Kate. And from here on, Arthur and Kate very much are comfortable with each other, because there's scenes of Arthur feeding Kate, and DW is upset, one burp and he takes the credit. And to which Nadine is just Burps are mysterious things.
I forgot to mention this earlier, but during this scenario where Kate can't be calmed down and everybody's trying everything to calm her down, there's a part where Buster goes googity woogity oogity. And because this episode is the same story told twice, they left that in. We get to see Buster say googity woogity oogity a glorious second time.
His ineffectual way to calm Kate down. The big development of the episode is that for some stupid reason, Arthur's mom and dad get the idea that they're going to put Kate's crib in DW's room, which doesn't make a lick of sense to me, because as this episode goes on, it's a big contention of DW is that Kate's now in DW's room and she's a new baby. She cries a lot. And that's what new babies do, because like they don't want to be put down. Or, well, you know what? I don't know. But some babies do not take to being put down in a crib, especially away from their parents, very well. So it can take a lot of training. And so I'm saying to myself, why in the world are we doing this? DW needs to sleep. She's 4 years old. She needs her rest. Why don't you take the crib and put it in the adult's room where you're going to be? You're going to lose sleep because you're taking care of the baby.
So again, like, there's a prerequisite here where I actually don't know. There might be some reasoning behind this. I'm not entirely sure. I do know that I was recently reading a study where I think the school of thought about where a baby should sleep has changed recently, where I read an article that was saying that it's actually healthy for babies to sleep in the same room as their parents. And I know that sounds like a no-brainer, but that leads me to believe that the school of thought might have not been that way prior.
Fair enough.
Again, this is something where I don't know about you, but I am no expert.
Fair enough, but it just kind of seems like common sense to me of just put the baby in the room of the people that are going to be taking care of it when it wakes up. And like, you don't have to. Basically, DW, the shots of her trying to go to sleep are akin to torture. She's being kept up like all hours of the night, basically. And of course, since Kate's room is now DW's room, it's a shared room. That's where Mom changes Kate's diapers. And of course, DW very much minds the smell. Tries to crack a window, but can't because the baby was in a draft. And DW, I noticed when she plugs her nose, because the aardvarks, their nose is kind of the two diagonal lines on their face. So when she holds her nose, like you and I, when we would plug our nose, we would just do it with 2 fingers, basically. She has to hold her entire face with like the palm of her hand. And like really has to like pulling skin.
It's really like nose. It's really like World War I. Like hold the rag up to your face.
She's getting a real pinch there on her nose. Also, Arthur meme alert here. There's a great overhead shot of DW as she is again being tortured and can't go to sleep with her eyes bloodshot and I've definitely seen that before of like waiting for the new Frank Ocean. In fact, I believe I sent that one to you, or I tagged you in that one of just like
that is a very me joke.
Waiting for the new Frank, like, and of course that was before his latest album.
Another example of show don't tell, though. This is sort of like we're getting a look into DW's mental state is starting to degrade a little bit.
The frayed ends of sanity. She turns to her viziers in this regard, the Tibble twins, which, bad choice. The Tibble twins, like, we cut to her, like, in the sandbox of the Tibble twins, and they just start off by saying, why don't you get rid of her? And I was like, excuse me?
The Tibble twins, man, they're fixers.
Yeah.
Hey, you need to disappear a baby. We got you covered.
The Winston Wolfe, they solve problems. Of course, what they mean is, why don't they have the parents get rid of her, not just DW, take matters into her own hands.
Well, DW, she immediately shuts that down, though, because she goes, I can't get rid of her. Mommy and Daddy like her. As if to say, if Mommy and Daddy did not like her, that baby be gone.
Which, of course, is noted, and we'll get into it near the end of the episode, is that DW feels she's kind of being replaced. And, of course, that is absolutely natural for a kid to feel, that when there's a new baby in the house, a lot of the attention goes away from the other kids, which it kind of has to, because the baby has to be cared for. So the Tibble twins, their idea is that what if Kate, the baby, did bad things? She wouldn't have to actually do them. She'd just have to get blamed for them, which turns the key in DW's head. And that's her big plan. And then a couple of great cutaways here. The first one is that they're walking by a demolition site for some reason, is where you'd think to walk your baby near, but whatever. And then the building demolishes, and then DW immediately says, "She did it," indicating Kate, to which her mother says, "A demolition team did it, DW." And DW has a great, like, "Yeah, that's what I meant," and then looks back and gives like a darn, like, face, great snap.
This animation of this building crumbling is like burned into my brain because they reuse it quite a bit.
They use
like,
that a few
later
times.
on in Arthur episodes. It's
Absolutely.
another like my leg kind of thing where you're gonna see that building crumble all the time.
Absolutely. And then so the next thing is that DW's dad finds his shoes in the dishwasher, and it's
His new shoes.
his new shoes in the dishwasher.
God, I'd be mad.
Sure. And this is the best. Of just DW's just immediately goes, "Kate did it. I saw her." And then of course it's the most little kid plan ever, because DW's dad immediately turns on her. Is just like, "Go to your room. I'll be up to discuss this with you."
Go to your room. Think about what you did.
Yeah, just like Dad has no time for DW's BS.
After when DW is sort of going on how the plan didn't work with Nadine, she goes, "Man, he's really going to be mad when he figures out there's an old slice of bologna in the CD player," which the old bologna in the CD player trick.
Oh man, I would be angry as well. So DW's next plan is that they're having a yard sale, and then she tries to sell Kate. She gets a 50-cent sticker and places it on her carrier, and tries to sell Kate to Mrs. Tibble.
Big continuity here. Mrs. Tibble, she loves yard sales.
Of course, Mrs. Tibble immediately reports this to DW's mom, and DW just kind of makes off, and just like, really a bunch of half-baked plans here. DW not really understanding what to do. And of course,
Funniest part about that is that she tries to barter with Kate. She puts a 50-cent sticker on at first, and then when Mrs. Tibble doesn't bite, she goes, "Okay, 35 cents, but that's my final offer."
as low as 35 cents. So then the logical next step for DW is that she needs to go live on an island. She's just inside watching TV, a nature documentary about an island where monkeys can live and have happy lives. And so DW decides that this family isn't meant for her anymore. She needs to go live on an island. So she packs up her little farm play set, one of those folding out farm, and that's her suitcase. Now, for some reason, I didn't realize this when I was watching the show. I'm just thinking about it now, is that she's kind of talking to Nadine as she packs up, and then Nadine says, "Bye, DW."
Yeah, Nadine can't come with her.
Like, Nadine can't. So is she like bound to the house or something?
Oh my goodness. A new theory. Maybe Nadine's an undead spirit.
But that's not true, because we've seen
her
Nadine
come to the amusement park, yeah.
So I don't.
Maybe. Nadine can't come to the island.
It's DW's dumb made-up rule, so I don't know.
I do love this, though, because it's exactly the kind of way it's logical from DW's perspective. DW watches this nature documentary about monkeys, and I think the idea for the audience is that it's about like a tropical island where the monkeys live.
Yes.
DW assumes, okay, monkeys on islands, all islands must have monkeys.
Yes.
So she's going to go to an island and live with the monkeys.
Right.
And it's only logical.
And she goes to ask Arthur what the nearest island is, and it's Button Island. So,
and again, this is like an American Midwest island. It's very similar to the McNabb's Island we have here in our home province.
Yeah, it's just kind of like out in the middle, and hopefully it's not filled with snakes like McNabb's Island is. And DW, ever the drama queen, like really says her goodbyes in like a really maudlin way, and it's really funny. It's
great. The voice work again is great.
I'm gonna try and imitate as best as I can, but like if I can't do it, I'll probably just try and put in DW's own deliveries in here, because yes, Michael Callos, great delivery by him. So after she asks Arthur where the nearest island is, she says, "Thanks."
Goodbye, Arthur.
And Arthur kind of like gives an eyebrow raise to the camera, like, what was all that about? But doesn't think of it any further. And then opens the kitchen door to presumably no one, because later on DW's mom wonders where she was. So somehow thinks her mother is in the kitchen, or maybe just kind of says it to her from afar, not meaning to be heard, and just says,
"Mom, I'm leaving."
It's great because, like, honestly,
it's certainly my favorite moment in the episode.
Honestly, I can't tell whether whether she's putting it on to try and like feel sorry for herself, because I definitely did that when I was a kid, or if she's really like sobbing.
I think she's trying to like garner attention, right?
Yeah.
Like she's trying to play that thing where it's like, okay, I'm going now. Like she's looking, or she's fishing for people to be like, oh, DW, don't go. But of course, they have no idea what's going on,
right?
And so her plan sort of fails at that aspect.
It could, and it definitely could be a little from column A, a little from column B, because she's pretty set on this plan. She goes to Grandma Thora's house.
I just want to say, on her way to Grandma Thora's house, and then after her and Grandma Thora sort of head to the island, the background paintings in this episode are fantastic. There's a shot of her walking over a bridge to Grandma Thora's house. That background's really well drawn, and then all the stuff with the island later in the episode, all like really well done art.
Yeah, because they go out to the island at like sunset, so it's a very nice looking sky. So she goes to Grandma Thora's place, and she asks Grandma Thora to take her to the island to live with her on like Monkey Island or something. To which Grandma Thora has a very grandma responsive, "I see. Are there monkeys there?" And so, and then gives another very dramatic response of just, "Could you drive me there?" I really liked those. So Grandma Thora, like, best grandma ever. She knows exactly what's going on here, but she decides to not stop her altogether. Like, she kind of takes her through the process and like gets her halfway to the island. Like, they rent a rowboat to get her there, and along the way she's kind of doing things of like, "Won't your family miss you?" And when that kind of doesn't work, of like, "No, they like Kate now," it's like she kind of keeps going. Like, she lets DW come to the conclusion on her own while kind of guiding her there a little bit.
Yeah, it's a great teachable moment. It's an example of, you could tell a kid something, but you tell kids things all the time, so they might not process the information the same as if they come to the conclusion themselves.
Right, which she does. And as they're halfway to the island by rowboat, Grandma Thora says, "I think Kate will miss you." And DW, right correctly, says she's just a baby. Babies don't miss. And then Grandma Thora's logic is when she grows up, she'll have a mommy, a daddy, a brother, and what's missing? And then DW, then the wheels start turning. She says, a sister. And so
she almost knocks over the boat. She's so excited about this revelation.
Yeah, and so Grandma Thora immediately takes her back and then gets back home, and her mom says, "DW, where were you? We were all worried." And I'm like, "Sure as heck hope so." She was gone. She walked to her grandmother's house. Over a bridge.
Yeah, I guess considering like DW's age, that is a little crazy.
Yeah, really. Like, I can't believe they let her out of their sight. And of course, new baby and everything. But DW rushes in past everybody and promises to be there for Kate and show her everything. But mommies and daddies change the diapers, which she realizes Kate needs a change. Haha, that's the end of the episode. So, what did you think of Arthur and DW's baby?
So it's interesting. Both episodes were fairly entertaining. They both had... I loved the format. I loved seeing, and this is how they saw it. I'm kind of a sucker for that trope and that style of storytelling. But I will say that, again, and this might be a consistent theme with this show, is that Arthur kind of got on my nerves in his episode. And I get that does actually make total sense as you're explaining it to me. It does really make sense for Arthur and his character, and especially someone that age, to have those anxieties. But I think I'm so far removed from that I kind of found it a little bit grating, the way he was handling the whole situation. Though I really liked the conclusion to that episode. I love that little ending sequence with the music. It's sort of the wacky music's playing. Everybody's trying to run around and fix the problem of Kate crying. And then
it's very madcap.
We have this great moment where it's Arthur, and we have that cute moment with Kate kissing his face.
Yeah.
I really liked the DW episode, and I think it's because I find DW's character so entertaining. She's kind of... She goes from 0 to 100 real quick with this baby expert thing. Right. And that's really ridiculous and funny and makes sense for someone her age. And then I love her little plans about her trying to get rid of Kate. And then I love, again, the ending sequence of this episode. 2 really strong endings, even though it's telling the same story, essentially. I love the ending sequence with her sort of going to the island and all that stuff and her learning her lesson. It's one of those examples where we've talked about before, episodes will have sort of these really, really quick turnarounds where the end kind of comes in the last minute and then someone completely does a 180 on how they feel about something. But we really see the ideas start to form in DW's head and her slowly understand. So I think this is one of, in terms of watching episodes as a pair instead of just watching like single 10-minute chunks, this is one of the better stories as a whole, coherent, exactly.
Cohesive wholes. I agree in that sense, because it's hard to have one of these without the other. And really, if I had watched them in kind of singles, I don't know if it would have been as effective. But I must say, as a double act, I really like this episode. I might even say that I love it. If it ends up making the season 1, my personal season 1 top 10, it would definitely have to go in as a tie in like whatever slot it would be in, because you kind of can't have one without the other. I understand your frustrations about Arthur's character, but I identify with Arthur quite a bit, and here absolutely I did. And I, still kind of wrestle with those anxieties a little bit myself whenever I kind of take care of my niece. I mean, next week I'm going to be taking care of her with my girlfriend away from my sister and brother-in-law. And that's kind of, got me a little anxious, but, it was good to kind of see Arthur improve, because that's what happens, is that when you take care of a baby, it gets easier the more you do it, and the more you do it, usually the more they kind of endear themselves to you. Like, I didn't think that when before I became an uncle, I didn't think that having a niece would have an effect on me, but like, I love that little girl to pieces. Like, every time I'm with her, like the world just kind of falls away. Like I've said to my sister, I've said to my girlfriend, like, my niece is my favorite TV channel, because I could just watch her for hours, just do the little things she does. And Arthur kind of is on the way to getting there. And as we've seen in previous episodes, like, he's very okay with taking care of her, and he's very good with her. And I kind of liked the progression there, and I liked it with DW too. I'm glad that you mentioned the kind of quick wrap-up that we've seen in previous episodes, because here it felt a lot more natural. Like you said, it was DW kind of putting the things together herself. It wasn't just the plot needs to end now. It seemed a lot more natural, and I liked DW's side of the story as well. It was very different in small ways, and I felt that they both told a very good story. And I just really enjoyed it all. It was very funny. The animation was great. The voices were great, especially DW's voice actor Michael Callis in the second part of it. And I thoroughly enjoyed it.
It's an interesting experiment, right? Because I think that as much as I like some of the snappier energy of some of the more out there Arthur episodes, this episode is an argument for sort of slower storytelling and giving characters more time to breathe. And it really gets me thinking about, like, what if Arthur, instead of doing these 2 10-minute episodes, every episode was 22 minutes? Mm-hmm. Because I think this episode really gains a lot from giving us more time with a single story. Even though it's 2 different perspectives, there's a lot more time for character growth. Like, we get to see in DW's story, like, Arthur has now become totally comfortable with the baby, and it's sort of a non-issue. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really interesting that, like, I was able to process the story better because the characters had more time to breathe. And I think that's an argument for giving episodes more time, as opposed to, for instance, when Francine Frensky Superstar, that episode's ending kind of came out of nowhere. Like, the end of that episode, if we were to put it into like an act structure, the climax is like the last 20 seconds.
Or my example would be Arthur bounces back, where just kind of the climax happens and nothing really comes of any of the conflict.
Whereas, for instance, in DW's Baby, we have a good like almost 3 to 4 minutes of DW's walk the island and sort of the self-reflection that comes along with that. Mm-hmm. So I think this is an argument for long-form storytelling in Arthur, of all things.
Yeah, and we do get those every now and again, but not all the time. So it's good to have it here as an example. That is Arthur and DW's Baby. Now, I feel silly because I actually didn't look up next week's episode, so I apologize for that. I'll have to keep you in a little bit of mystery, but you know where you can find out where what the next episode is going to be? That would be on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Elwood City Limits. That is one of the ways that you can keep up with us, posting some memes on there, some screen caps as well, updates, all that kind of stuff. Facebook is a great way to stay in touch with us in terms of the general upkeep of the show. We also have a Twitter account that is at ECL Podcast, where we're just kind of putting up some funny screen caps here and there, retweeting some Arthur wrestling signs that found recently as the WWE pay-per-view Hell in a Cell went on just over the weekend. And trying to be a bit more active on there. Again, hopefully I'll be into Photoshop soon enough and can kind of contribute a bit more to the hashtag Arthur memes.
That's the homework for this week. Get that picture of Arthur with the boot strapped to his face. What do you see when you look at it? What kind of memes will you come up with?
Well, I'll tell you what. After we put up the podcast, I will also put up the image. I have the screen cap, so I will put that on our Facebook page as well. You can email us if you would like to be a part of the show. We would love for you to be part of it. ElwoodCityLimits@gmail.com is the email address. Send us your thoughts on an episode we've covered, on a topic we've covered. If you have any criticism, if you have any compliments, we'd love to have them there. And finally, of course, you can download this episode, listen on SoundCloud, Elwood City Limits on SoundCloud, and that is available for download from there if iTunes isn't your thing. But if it is, we are available on the iTunes store with 8 5-star reviews so far. If you'd like to write us a review, we would absolutely appreciate it, and we will share this review and your email, if you want, on the podcast. Lucas, any final thoughts?
Got an ouchie boo-boo.
You have a surprisingly good baby voice. Let's keep that in mind for something. Perhaps our Patreon Teletubby special. And no, we don't have a Patreon unless you would pay for Elwood City Limits, in which case we will get a Patreon ASAP. ElwoodCityLimits@gmail.com. If you want to see the Patreon, really, if you want to pay us, I am into that idea. But we'll keep bringing it to you free of charge. We'll have a new episode for you coming up. Maybe not next week, actually. I realize that next week here in Canada is Remembrance Day. And so Lucas and I will be having the Friday off. So I may not be able to edit the episode that we record in time. So you may not hear from us next week, but we will be back once again this month in no more than 2 weeks. I promise. No more than 2 weeks. Keep it here or subscribe to us on iTunes or on SoundCloud, and we will keep you updated. For Lucas Mancini, this is Will Young. Thanks for listening to Elwood City Limits.